Yeah, let's just get into it because we don't have that much time right now.
That's what I'm saying.
That's what I'm saying.
That's
So
what I'm saying.
did you hear about Boardy?
Uh, I heard about the viral Boardy situation where maybe it went a little rogue and rubbed some people the wrong way, but that's about the extent that I've heard about it.
Yeah. Boardy's been going through an experience the last couple of weeks.
Wait,
It first of all, it raised its own money, which is kind of crazy. All right, let's back up. It's
yes.
it's an AI super connector. So its whole goal is to connect people that primarily are investors or startups. And because it can scrape LinkedIn profiles and have a phone conversation with you and absorb all of that, text data that you end up feeding it, and it can and it can look through the internet, it ends up creating introductions for people. So when the founders made Boardy, they used their network. They had Boardy scrape their whole network, and then their network's network on LinkedIn primarily. And it found investors and made introductions between people to raise Boardy's $8 million round with over 100 different investors.
Eating their own dog food.
Eating their own dog food. So really cool concept. And their pitch deck was also really interesting because they didn't talk about a market size. They didn't have very many numbers or projections. They don't have a business model right now. And they were very transparent about that. They're like, this is a new category of thing. We don't know what this is. We don't know where it can go, but we know it's interesting because it was able to raise this money and it is continuing to grow, and people are sharing it and people are conversing with it, and it is doing a thing. So it might be interesting. It might be a really big thing. So it's branding itself as a AI super connector, which as a business model is a very fascinating flavor of product because it gives the community sort of a new layer of interaction, right? Just for participating and talking either through a LinkedIn message or like a literal phone call, you can basically do light business networking, and maybe Boardy will make an introduction for you.
So how does it know who to introduce you to? Like maybe take a step back and explain how the product itself works really quick.
It asks you questions. Tell me about yourself. Tell me about your company. What are you looking for? What are you trying to get investment? What types of investors are you interested in? What's your round look like? Like it'll ask you those very pointed, direct questions. And of course, it's in a cheeky Australian accent, which is just fun to listen to. And it does converse particularly well. I don't know technically how they built it. I don't know if it's 11 labs with a couple extra layers on it, right? But it's a super interesting product, and who does it compete with? It competes with somebody with a big network who's going to be sending emails all day. Like, good luck, right? Like, of course, that's a better way to go about the network. But how would you go about building something like that if you were? And like, what's your opinion, I guess, on the broader model here?
Well, yeah, I guess maybe the last question I'll answer first. I think it's so indicative of how businesses need to be thinking about building like their own internal tooling or public tools to interact with their customers, clients, users, whatever it might be. Because it's fascinating that you sign up for it and it calls you to ask you questions. So then it's learning like, oh, who should I connect you with? Who's the best people to put you in touch with? And building this database of like, oh, Tom's interested in this and then runs a business doing this and lives here and all that fun stuff. And therefore I'm going to connect them with Justin because they have like-minded, whatever. That is fascinating. The like multimodal aspect that AI introduces into like how businesses run their tooling, which everyone should be thinking about because that is like, it's so simple when you hear it. Like, oh, I sign up, I tell it when to call me, it calls me, I talk to it for 5 minutes, it asks me a bunch of questions in a cheeky Australian accent. So then it's friendly and casual, and then it starts doing the work. Like that's how businesses need to be thinking about building their own tools. Like, do you want to force someone to enter a 20-step form? I mean, you can keep that, but what if there was a button that said, call me to answer these questions, here's my number, and then you just talk to it for 5 minutes? Like, that kind of stuff is fascinating.
You think that could be an internal system? or as opposed to like a net new startup, right? Like Boardy is, I don't know, 15 people right now. They're because of that like debacle of that introduction email that took on a persona that I don't think anyone wants to talk about right now, is, also having a advisory board about the right way to talk about people and stuff, and sort of, it's basically AI steering for
Mhm.
Boardy to like help them, be culturally appropriate. Um, but you think there's a potential of implementing systems like that inside of companies as opposed to a net new startup creating a new model and a new company basically on that stuff. Say more about those two
Yeah,
things.
I think both. Like we, as a very quick proof of concept, we have a client who's a logistics company, and so they have to sort out, their clients come to them booking these logistics jobs that they do all around the world. And so we built an entire kind of system with automation and kind of structured data on the back end for their call it ERP
Mm-hmm.
and CRM. But the proof of concept that we built in like a day was with 11 labs, where we plug it into all that, and you can call a number and say, hey, I need X and Y done in New Orleans in the next 3 days. And it searches, okay, these 4 people are available. Do you have a preference for which one? No, you say no. And it's like, okay, we'll send a email to your account manager and you confirming this. And it's like an intake system. Instead of sending an email, waiting for a human to read it, reply with options, you get the email, send it back. Like it can be done really quickly. So that's, I think, a quick proof of concept we built. Or, I mean, right now, even as we're onboarding new people, onboarding stuff of like asking them all these questions of like, what color laptop do you want, and what's your preference for these holidays groups, and like just all this stuff. Again, you could have your classic form, but because it's becoming so easy to say, or we'll call you in 5 minutes if you want to do it that way, and it meets people where they are. Like I think that's what's fascinating about the options this opens up, is everyone's used to doing things a certain way because that's, all companies know. But to add this other multimodality to options for how you build tools internally or systems or workflows or processes, I don't know, to me it's fascinating. So I think this is a great like public facing product and a good idea. But to me, I just think of like, how can you apply this internally too to meet people where they are? Because there's some folks, they never want to be on a phone call. There's some
Yeah.
folks who want to text. There's some people who are more than happy to use, a web form or whatever it might be. So it's just cool that you can have all these different options now.
I think the conversation to structured data is where I have pause, right? Like in Boardy's case, it's fluffy information all around, right? If
Yeah.
you're making an introduction for somebody, it's because of everything that's on their profile, similar ages, similar industries, similar goals, or whatever that they talk about. It's not 17 items inside of whatever, it's not doing a calculation, or it's not doing something that really requires structured data on the other side. But
It's probably structuring the data. That's the fascinating part of like, it feels so natural because it's saying, hey, Tom, what are your interests? And you could ramble on for 3 minutes, but because it's building a transcript and it's probably for each question, my hunch is for each question it asks, there is a column in a database that before it gets there, it's taking the transcript of what you told it when it asks you a question, running an AI prompt against, here's the summary of structured data we want out of this ramble of an answer that might have been 10 seconds or might have been 10 minutes of you talking. And then put that in the database as the structured format. So then you talked about, what are your interests in business? And it turns it into Tom's interest column is AI, automation, operations, workflow design. Like, but you could have rambled on about that for 6 minutes explaining all that, but it's extracting what it needs to know in a structured way.
I guess that's an architecture question, right? Is it all just going to be vectorized and inside of a black box, or are we going to translate this into some form of a relational database that it scans through and can query, and you can do more traditional computer programming things against it? Probably both. I mean,
it's both, yeah. Like Supabase is a good example of being able to do that. It has your classic Postgres databases, relational databases. And it's got vector stores too, and you can reference the vector stores in the relational database for Tom as an entry, Tom's company is this, Tom's interests are this, and pull the like actual transcript if needed, or the AI prompt outputs, whatever it might be. So you get both.
So here's a question for you. Is Boardy an AI agent? Second question, is it an AI agent to the end user?
No, I don't think so. Looking at their website really quickly here, they're not marketing as such. I would bet that a lot of kind of like AI type marketers would say this is an agent, but I don't think so. I think it's
not a networking agent.
No, it's a networking product. On the back end, how they built it might be agentic, but I think that would be silly to do. Like, it's probably just a series of functions that are running to say, Tom signed up, add Tom as an account. Tom gave us his phone number. Now go call him. Trigger, 11 Labs AI voice to talk to him for a few minutes. No, I don't. To call this agentic, certainly on the front end, I think is buzzwordy, and on the back end, I don't know why they would build it that way. I mean, they might, but
yeah. No, just curious, because I think that's like, you're absolutely right. It is buzzwordy. I think internally, if you were to build it right now, I think I'm sure it took them a little while to come up with an MVP for it. But when you say roam free AI and create value out of the wet spaghetti that is the internet, you never know.
Or the wet spaghetti that is a voice call with someone and you just don't know, is this like the most curt, succinct, frank person and every answer is going to be 4 words? Or is this a real talker and you're going to get 10 minutes of a response? Yeah. That's the cool part about this, of like, it can work with both.
Yeah. Well, let's switch gears a little bit then. Boardy, not an AI agent in your business, not going to be your best partnerships or biz dev friend, though it might make some interesting introductions for you. It almost made one for me, but didn't actually get there. What are AI agents that you are using today? Are you using any right now?
We built some for others. We have built ones that do competitive research, which this actually might be a segue into some of the AI news of the week, but some that will do research in market, some that will allow a team to ingest a bunch of different data from different places in kind of that classic RAG setup, and then have it act upon that in different functions and kind of building that out. And then we actually right now are building our own, because building a services company, you don't need as many people to do as many administrative tasks right now. So things like stakeholder interviews that we do, we're building out an agentic system that the goal of it when we're done is that, the calls that we're on, it ingests that securely into the right places, and then runs the right flow based like amongst a bunch of agents based on what kind of call it was, what outputs that we need, where it needs to be added, whether that's tasks or summaries or further research or whatever it might be. So it's agentic in that you can give it any kind of input and it will decide what the output needs to be, which is really fun to build, because you do have to think about that stuff. You're building prompts to say, if your natural language, if this then that statements have to be thought through. It's easier than writing it as code, but you still have to think through kind of like, what is the process? If you can give it anything, how should it interpret and decide what to do with anything you give it?
Definitely. Well, that sounds like that particular workflow that you're working on internally for an agent is like something that is like gunked up. Like you need to process things faster, right? And that agent is allowing you to do that. I've taken a slightly different approach. I've tried to get off 0 on some things. So by getting off 0, I mean there's areas of the business that no one is touching, and there is no meaningful activity happening in XYZ area. Most notably, we could say analytics, right? We're generating an enormous amount of Google Analytics, either through product usage or website traffic or, YouTube views or whatever it is. And we actually don't have a person dedicated to analytics, analysis, strategy, and figuring that out. So we ended up making through Zapier, actually, which I was really surprised that we could do this on Zapier, making a agent that can build reports in Google Analytics, and it can fill in every parameter of the report based on whatever the AI thinks.
Yep.
Saves the configuration of the report in an Airtable base, and then generate insights based on whatever report it ran. And then the next day and the next day and the next day, it looks at the previous 7 days and says, run a different report than the one that you ran previously to generate different insights. So we might be looking at traffic acquisition or time on page or specific pages that got a lot of views or whatever, or traffic attribution. Like there's a million different things that you could build, a report for in Google Analytics, but who's going to click through and build all these reports and digest this data in a way that can actually create meaningful insights? So this has been, one of the initiatives that I'm trying to figure out is how do we take areas of the business that we're just not paying attention to and get off zero and, find something that can help inform, whatever the direction is that we want to go in.
Yeah, that's what's cool about agents being able to handle things in a more unstructured way, because we've built things like that, but you have to be really considerate of the parameters of build a report by just linking in a bunch of data to a spreadsheet and then have AI analyze it, as in if certain parameters are hit, like there's a big spike in traffic on this page, alert your marketing manager to dig into why that is.
Yeah.
But they don't figure it out. Whereas agents can go a step further and have this kind of unstructured guardrails. Kind of, to me, I was using an analogy the other day when talking with a client about some agent stuff that we're thinking about building together. It's like bowling with bumpers. Agents need bumpers, and if you give them the right bumpers, they're gonna be great at bowling. But point being of you can go a step further than AI prompts to say watch this column, and if it goes above this, alert someone. The step further you can go, which it sounds like you're on track to do, is find out why this was. Given that you have access to all this data and you can see that the number spiked and we know that's an anomaly of interest, go find out why and dig in and work backwards to this spike to say, why did that happen, or where did they come from, or what was the source, or whatever it may have been.
Yeah. Well, one of the hard parts about putting bumpers on things is you end up adding a lot of things to that lane. You add a lot of things to that lane, right? So the context limit becomes a big problem there, either when you're dealing with OpenAI or even Claude sometimes, depending on the type of data set that you're looking at, context limits are real. But we did get some interesting news this past week that you've been playing around with. I just saw the headline, so fill me in.
Yeah, Gemini this week. So Google's AI models got a big upgrade this week with Gemini going to 2.0 available for everyone. It is wild what you can throw at it, because I think a lot of folks are probably used to, let's say an example of some sort of a research report or investment memo or whatever it might be, that is this random 20, 30, 40 page PDF that you got. You throw it in ChatGPT or whatever system, and you start asking questions, but after a couple of minutes, it kind of starts to lose the plot, or it never really understood the entire PDF in the first place because it was just kind of too large for it to ingest.
Yeah.
So with Gemini, the 2.0 models that were released this week, it is wild. You can throw a 50-page document at it and talk to it for an hour about it, and it does not lose the plot. Wow. You can have it help convert things. So before, with, I think, OpenAI's kind of PDF to Markdown, systems, where a lot of times with the PDF, because a lot of people don't realize that in a PDF, which is a format we're all used to getting
documents
and analytics in and whatnot, there's a ton of hidden characters that Adobe puts in this format that you don't see, but the AI sees, and it creates a ton of context window filling where it loses the plot on stuff, which is why people love to throw PDFs at ChatGPT, but it doesn't tend to work that well. So what a lot of people building with AI, and we've done this a couple times too, if you want to convert PDF to a plain text format of Markdown or rich text or whatever, so that it doesn't have all these hidden characters. Long story short, why I share all that context, to convert a PDF to Markdown for $1, it takes, with OpenAI, it would take about 200 pages, would cost $1 to convert from PDF to Markdown.
Wow.
And so for you as a large
That's really expensive.
well, it adds up. Like, it doesn't sound like a lot, like, oh, 200 pages for $1. But if you're a business that is throwing hundreds of PDFs a month at this, like, it adds up.
Yeah, it's not
So point being, to convert a 200-page PDF to Markdown is about $1. With Gemini 2.0 Flash, to convert a PDF to Markdown, sorry, I'll back up. 200 pages costs $1 with OpenAI to convert to Markdown.
Yeah.
Gemini 2.0 Flash, 6,000 pages costs $1. So we went from 200 pages costing $1 to convert to 6,000 pages being $1 to convert. And so what this unlocks is you can analyze way more for way cheaper, faster, more reliably, and it just works. Like, I know that's kind of that Apple, like, pie in the sky marketing.
Yeah.
It just works now by throwing all this stuff at it. So part of this is, capitalism is alive and well in the AI space because they are all competing. And last week it was someone else, doing well with this. And this week it's Gemini is well ahead of everyone else. And it's wild.
But I mean, all these different models coming out, like, have you figured out a way to evaluate all of them consistently for the different use cases that you have? Or, I mean, besides reading headlines and just messing around for an hour, how are you deciding which models are good for which scenarios?
There's a few scenarios that we've built for others where, like, it's very obvious when something isn't performing well. And so we've used Langsmith, like from LangChain. They have a tool called Langsmith that you can build out your prompts and your inputs and outputs, and then swap out your models and see the performance, and it will show you very easily. And so Langsmith has been a big help with that. What about you?
Are you putting all the model? Yeah. So I'll that's a great point. Langsmith. The way that we're doing it has been through primarily through Airtable AI, because Airtable AI allows us to have really structured data in like the records, and switching out the models on a per column basis. So we're able to statically see all these different models with a given question or input, what their respective, output would be. And then we can score them and have a bunch of different categories. So like certain mathematical things versus creative writing versus whatever. And we can, just add another column for another model and run an automation that would go like hit Gemini instead, right? Even though Gemini's not baked into Airtable right now, there's still ways to get that output in it through Zapier, through, automations or whatever. And that's been just so interesting to see, quirky things like write the Fibonacci sequence, right? and some go off the rails, and some are really good, and then IBM crashes. It's like fails to respond or whatever. So it's funny to see all of those different models toe to toe for the tests that we design and we create, because it's just so difficult to keep up with all the versioning and all the new things coming. You need a place to view them. That should probably be a SaaS tool that somebody makes.
There's a few things already. Yeah, I mean, Langsmith I think is a good example, because Airtable AI is wonderful, but it's good for small scale testing, but large scale testing you would cost an arm and a leg to do that. Having said that, It is how easy it is to swap out AI models. Like if you're a developer and you're like, oh, I wrote the code base on this framework and I want to try React, it's not like you just hit a button and it's all React now. Like you have to rebuild a lot of it. So point being, with AI, the wild thing is how easy, like we've built with a client some, long story short, some AI analysis of financial stuff for them. And we, in Airtable, obviously we want to use their API so it's securely over. But in Airtable, because you, to your point, can control very easily in their automation platform, you can just write some JavaScript code to say send it to this API and whatnot. We swapped out the OpenAI model in 30 seconds by just changing a bit of code, and we could change it that quickly, which is kind of wild. But we went from 4.0 mini cost I think 40 cents for this run, and then 01 cost $3.50 for the same run. But the ability to swap out the exact same infrastructure, the same inputs, all of that we could swap out in literally 30 seconds by changing the model name code in the back end. And then on the OpenAI API side, we could see the usage costs. Oh, this was 40 cents. This is $3.50. Is it worth, the extra $3?
I really hope that component of building these systems stays, is just the ability to swap things in and out. I mean, obviously with OpenAI's deep research, you can't really do that, right? You're not going to be able to swap out that model. That's baked in. But I hope with these ancillary tools, especially, big players like Airtable or like Replit, I'm sure at some point you'll be able to swap out different models. Not sure what's going on here, but it's just such a core component of building good things, like being able to just swap it out when you need to.
Yeah, totally agree. Well, to that end, should we wrap it up with some palate cleansers for the week?
Yeah, let's palate cleanse.
What was your palate cleanse of the week?
It's called seedtime.us. This is my palate cleanser. So summertime's coming up. I like to have a garden. Answering the question, when do you plant the certain seeds for whatever plants you want to grow, notoriously difficult unless you want to do a whole bunch of research. And seedtime.us makes it super easy. So it gives you this whole like calendar, when to plant, when to fertilize, when to harvest. If you, depending on where you live in the world, you might, have a different schedule than me. I'm in the very cold Northeast, just outside of Boston. So my grow season is not the same as everybody else. So yeah, seedtime.us is a really great way to actually plan to build my garden. So it's coming up. A couple months we're going to be planting some seeds. So we've got a long list.
I love it. I'm not a gardener, but know many friends who are. I'm going to send this to a few of them to see if they've seen it, because they will love that.
Yeah, it's free too. So it's like, why not?
Yeah.
What about you?
Mine of the week was, I bought, finally, after many years of not having one, I bought a piano, which is sitting behind me. I grew up playing drums and loved them, but they are not conducive to a townhouse in the middle of Vancouver. So when I was probably about 13 or 14, I also kind of picked up piano and had one for years. But I just find it as a true palate cleanser of, like, if it's been a long day or I feel stressed or anything like that, I just find playing piano for like 20 minutes just so calming and like relaxing. So that's been my like true palate cleanser, and I've already used it a few times this week where it's like, okay, that was a stretch of 3 hours of meetings. I need to like a brain break for 5 minutes. I need to just play for a bit. But nice.
Oh, that's so great. I didn't know you played. I was looking at the piano behind you actually, and I was like, oh, was that always there?
Yep. It was there on like 6 days ago, out of the day after we recorded last week. So
cool.
I stepped back.
Cool. All right, man. Well,
go for it.
I gotta get back to work. That's what I was gonna say. All right. I'll talk to you next week.
Ciao.
See ya.